The glass ceiling of the corporate world isn't just about gender. Sometimes it's about silence. Harrison Calloway, the CEO of Vertex Global, thought he owned the room. He thought the quiet, older Asian man in the corner wearing a faded windbreaker was a nobody, a nuisance cluttering up his VIP view. He certainly thought the waitress Sarah was invisible, nothing more than a pair of hands serving his scotch. He was wrong, dead wrong. By the time the dessert course arrived, a few whispered words in a language he didn't understand would cost him $1 billion. This is the story of how arrogance lost a fortune, and how a waitress speaking perfect Japanese brought a titan to his knees. The rain battered the windows of the Gilded Lily, Manhattan's most exclusive rooftop restaurant. Inside, however, the air was still scented with white truffles and old money. It was a place where a single reservation could cost more than a Honda Civic, and the staff were trained to be as silent as ghosts. Sarah Bennett adjusted her apron in the service corridor, her hands trembling slightly. She was 24 with tired eyes that betrayed the double shifts she had been pulling for 6 months. Her student loans were suffocating, and her father's medical bills were piling up on the kitchen counter like a monument to bad luck. She needed this job. Specifically, she needed the tips from table 4. Sarah. Roger. The floor manager snapped his voice a harsh whisper. Roger was a man who believed kindness was a weakness. Table 4 is Harrison Calloway, Vertex Global. He's closing the merger with Kaito Industries tonight. If you drop so much as a spoon, you're fired. Do you understand? Yes, Roger, Sarah said, keeping her head down. And keep an eye on table 5, Roger added with a sneer, gesturing to a small secluded table in the shadowy corner near the kitchen doors. Some tourist wandered in. I tried to turn him away, but he flashed a black card. Just get him a water and make sure he doesn't bother Mr. Calloway. He looks like he belongs in a cafeteria, not here. Sarah glanced at table 5. Sitting there was an older Asian man. He wore a simple, slightly worn beige windbreaker and wire-rimmed glasses. He was reading a paperback book, looking entirely out of place amidst the tuxedos and designer gowns. He looked lonely. I'll take care of him, Sarah said softly. Prioritize Calloway, Roger hissed. He's expecting the Japanese delegation at 8:00 p.m. sharply. He's already 3 scotches deep and angry. Sarah took a deep breath and pushed through the heavy oak doors into the dining room. The atmosphere at table 4 was toxic. Harrison Calloway sat like a king on a throne flanked by his VP, a nervous man named Greg, and his fiancée Lydia, who was busy critiquing the silverware. Harrison was a handsome man, in the way a shark is handsome, sleek, sharp, and cold. He checked his Rolex. Where are they? It's 7:55. The Japanese value punctuality, don't they? If Kaito backs out now, I'm going to ruin them. They'll be here. Harrison, Greg stammered. The merger's practically done. We just need the signature of the chairman. Sarah approached the table, balancing the tray. Good evening, Mr. Calloway. Another scotch. Harrison didn't look at her. He waved a hand dismissively, nearly knocking the tray from her grip. Keep them coming. And get this table cleared. It looks cluttered. Of course, sir. Sarah moved efficiently, removing empty glasses. And tell the manager to do something about the view, Harrison said, pointing a finger toward the corner. That old man over there, he's staring. It's distracting. I'm about to close a $10 billion deal. I don't want to look at someone's grandfather waiting for the early bird special. Lydia giggled, sipping her champagne. He does look tragic, doesn't he? Probably lost his tour group. Sarah felt a knot of anger in her chest, but she swallowed it. I believe he is just enjoying his dinner, sir. Harrison turned his head slowly, his eyes narrowing. He finally looked at her, not as a person, but as a malfunction appliance. Did I ask for your opinion? I asked you to move him. If you can't do it, I'll find someone who can. I can't move a paying customer, sir, Sarah said, her voice shaking but firm. Harrison scoffed, turning back to Greg. Service in this city has gone to hell. Just like this deal if those Japanese executives don't show up in 3 minutes. Sarah retreated, her face burning. She walked over to table 5. The older man looked up. His eyes were kind, crinkled at the corners. "Sumimasen," the man said quietly, bowing his head slightly. "Water, please." Sarah paused. The accent was authentic, refined. Not the harsh tones of a tourist, but the soft, rolling cadence of someone from Kyoto. She smiled, dropping her guard. "Of course," she replied. She poured him sparkling water. He looked at the book he was reading. It was a collection of classic poetry. "Thank you," he said in English, struggling with the word. "Waiting for friend." "Take your time," Sarah whispered. "Let me know if you need anything." She didn't know it then, but the man wasn't waiting for a friend. He was waiting to see if Vertex Global was worth saving. By 8:15 p.m., Harrison Calloway was furious. The delegation from Kiso Industries hadn't arrived. Or rather, the entourage of suits hadn't arrived. Harrison slammed his hand on the table, making the fine crystal jump. "Unbelievable!" Harrison shouted, drawing the attention of the entire room. "This is a power play. They're making me wait to negotiate a better price on the stock swap." Greg looked at his phone. "Sir, I'm trying to call the liaison. No answer." "Typical," Harrison sneered. "These Japanese companies. They think they're so honorable, but it's all games. They want us to bow and scrape. Well, I'm not bowing to anyone." At table 5, the older man flinched at the noise. He closed his book and looked toward table 4. He raised a hand, trying to catch Sarah's eye, but Harrison saw the movement. "What is he looking at?" Harrison stood up, his face flushed with alcohol and rage. "Hey, you!" The room went silent. The older man blinked, confused. Harrison strode over to the small table towering over the seated man. Sarah rushed out of the kitchen, panic rising in her throat. "Sir, please." Sarah intercepted him. "He doesn't speak much English. Please sit down." "He's been spying on us," Harrison accused, paranoid and drunk on power. "Who are you, huh? A corporate spy? Or just a senile old man?" The older man looked calm. He reached into his pocket. Harrison flinched, expecting a weapon, but the man simply pulled out a small worn notepad and a pen. He wrote something down in Japanese characters, tore off the page, and held it out to Harrison with a polite smile. Harrison snatched the paper. He looked at the scribbles, then crumpled it up and threw it into the man's half-eaten salad. "I don't read scribbles," Harrison spat. "Speak English or get out of my restaurant. I bought this table for the night. Technically, I bought the air you're breathing." "Harrison, stop," Lydia called out, though she looked bored rather than concerned. "You're making a scene." "I'm making a point." Harrison turned back to the older man. "This is America. We do business here. Big business. Not whatever this is." He gestured at the man's windbreaker. "Go find a soup kitchen." The older man's expression didn't change, but his eyes hardened. The kindness evaporated, replaced by a steeliness that felt colder than the winter rain outside. He looked at Sarah. He spoke softly in Japanese. "Kare wa itsumo ku nanoka." Is he always like this? Sarah froze. The room was silent, waiting for the confused waitress to apologize. But Sarah didn't apologize. She had spent 5 years in Osaka, teaching English, living with a host family in the hills of Mino. She knew that tone. It wasn't the tone of a tourist. It was the tone of a shogun. She looked at the billionaire, then back to the man. She answered him in flawless, formal Japanese. "Ye o kyaku-sama, kare wa tada osorete iru no desu. Oroka na hito wa rikai dekinai mono. Wo kawagarimasu." No honored guest. He is simply afraid. Foolish men fear what they do not understand. The older man's eyebrows shot up. A slow smile spread across his face. Harrison stared at Sarah, his jaw dropping. What did you just say? What is that gibberish?" Sarah turned to Harrison. Her face composed, her mask of servitude slipping just enough to reveal the intelligence beneath. "I told him that the soup here is excellent, Mr. Calloway, and I apologize for the noise." Harrison narrowed his eyes. "Don't get smart with me. Get him out." "I can't do that," Sarah said. "Then you're fired," Harrison roared. "Get out! Both of you!" Roger, the manager, came running over, sweating profusely. "Mr. Calloway, I am so sorry. Sarah, pack your things. Immediately. Security." "Wait!" A voice cut through the tension. It wasn't loud, but it carried an authority that made everyone stop. The older man at table 5 stood up. He didn't look frail anymore. He stood with perfect posture. He picked up the crumpled piece of paper from his salad, brushed off a piece of lettuce, and smoothed it out. He looked at Sarah and spoke in rapid, complex Japanese, testing her. "Tell him," the man said, his eyes locked on Harrison, "that the meeting was scheduled for 8:30 p.m. I was here at 7:45 p.m. Punctuality is the first requirement of trust." Sarah's heart pounded. She realized who he was. The merger. Kiso Industries. She turned to Harrison Calloway. The entire restaurant was watching. "Mr. Calloway," she said, her voice projecting clearly. "The gentleman says that he was early for your meeting. He says punctuality is the foundation of trust, and you have failed the first test." Harrison laughed nervously. "What him, you're lying. This guy is a bum. The chairman of Kiso Industries is Kaito Tanaka. He travels with a security detail of 12 men. He doesn't wear that." The man spoke again to Sarah, ignoring Harrison completely. "Tell him that a man who judges a book by its cover will never understand the story inside. And tell him Vertex Global is over-leveraged. I reviewed the files he left on the table while he was drinking. His debt ratio is 400%. Sarah turned to Harrison, translating efficiently. "He says you judge books by their covers. He also mentions that he overheard your conversation and glanced at your open files. He knows Vertex is over-leveraged with a 400% debt ratio." Harrison's face went pale. The color drained out of him so fast, he looked like a corpse. Those numbers were confidential. They were the poison pill hidden inside the merger documents, the secret that would bankrupt him if Kiso found out before signing. "Who are you?" Harrison whispered, his arrogance shattering into fear. The older man reached into his windbreaker pocket. Greg, the VP, flinched again. But the man simply pulled out a business card holder. He extracted a single card, heavy stock embossed with gold leaf and a black crane. He handed it to Sarah, not Harrison. Sarah read the card. "Kaito Tanaka, Chairman, Kiso Industries." She looked at the man, Mr. Tanaka. He nodded at her to give it to Harrison. Sarah handed the card to the CEO. Harrison held it with trembling fingers. He looked from the card to the man in the windbreaker. "Mr. Tanaka," Harrison choked out. I didn't know. My assistants. They said you were coming in a limousine. Please sit down. Let me buy you a drink. Let's start over." Mr. Tanaka looked at Harrison with absolute disgust. He then turned his back on the billionaire and looked at Sarah. "What is your name, child?" he asked in Japanese. "Sarah Bennett Tanaka-sama," she replied, bowing deeply, a perfect 45-degree angle of respect. "Sarah-san," Tanaka said in English, his voice heavy. "I do not wish to dine with this man. The air here is polluted. Is there somewhere else we can go? Somewhere quiet?" "My shift is over," Sarah said, glancing at the terrified manager, Roger. "I know a ramen place 3 blocks away. It's not fancy, but the broth is honest." Tanaka smiled. "Honest broth. That sounds expensive. Let us go." He began to walk toward the exit. "Wait, Mr. Tanaka!" Harrison screamed, scrambling after him. "You can't leave the deal. The board is waiting for the announcement tomorrow. If you walk out, Vertex stock drops to 0. I'll be ruined." Tanaka stopped at the door. He didn't turn around. He just spoke to the room in English. "You were ruined the moment you thought you were better than the person serving your food." He walked out. Sarah untied her apron, threw it at Roger's feet, and followed him. The rain had stopped, leaving the New York streets glistening under the neon lights. The silence between Sarah and Kaito Tanaka as they walked was comfortable, unlike the stifling tension of the Gilded Lily. They arrived at Oishi Bowl, a tiny hole-in-the-wall spot with steamed windows and peeling red paint. The contrast to the rooftop restaurant couldn't have been starker. "This is it," Sarah said, opening the door. "It's not much." "It is perfect," Tanaka said. They sat at the counter. The owner, an old friend of Sarah's named Ken, widened his eyes when he saw the man's suit jacket under the windbreaker. The tailoring was unmistakable to a trained eye, but he said nothing. They ordered 2 bowls of tonkotsu ramen. "So," Tanaka said, breaking his chopsticks, "where did you learn to speak my language so beautifully? Your accent. It is Kansai dialect, is it not?" "Yes." Sarah smiled, feeling the adrenaline of the last hour finally fading into exhaustion. "My father was a diplomat. We lived in Osaka for 5 years, then Kyoto for 5. I came back to the States for college, but life happened." "Life happened," Tanaka repeated, blowing on his noodles. "That usually means money troubles." "My mother got sick," Sarah admitted, staring into the broth. "Cancer. The insurance didn't cover everything. My father passed away 2 years ago. The debts, they don't go away when the people do." Tanaka ate in silence for a moment, savoring the food. "Harrison Calloway," he said suddenly. "He is a fool, but he is a powerful fool. He will not let tonight go. He will try to destroy you for embarrassing him." Sarah laughed bitterly. "I'm a waitress, Mr. Tanaka. There's not much left to destroy. I just lost my job. I'm probably going to be evicted next month. What's he going to do? Sue me for bad service." "He is a vindictive man," Tanaka said seriously. "I have been watching Vertex Global for months. Their numbers are fake. He cooks the books. He abuses his staff. He cheats his partners. I was going to acquire his company to dismantle it and save the workers, but I needed to see his character first. Tonight I saw enough." Tanaka put down his chopsticks and looked at Sarah. "I need a liaison. My current translation team consists of Oxford graduates who know the dictionary but do not know the soul of the language. They translate words, not meanings. Tonight, you translated my anger into dignity. You translated his insults into facts." Sarah looked up. "What are you saying?" "I am saying," Tanaka pulled out a sleek black smartphone and placed it on the counter, "that the deal with Vertex is dead. However, Kiso Industries is looking to expand its North American operations. I need an executive assistant who understands both cultures, who can spot a liar in 2 languages. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. "Mr. Tanaka, I don't have a business degree. I have a degree in art history." "Harrison Calloway has a Harvard MBA," Tanaka pointed out dryly. "And he is an idiot. I do not hire degrees. I hire character." The phone on the counter buzzed. It was a notification. Tanaka glanced at it. "It begins, 'Calloway has already called my legal team. He claims you manipulated the translation to sabotage the deal. He claims you were drunk." "That's a lie," Sarah gasped. "Of course it is. But he has lawyers. Expensive ones." Tanaka's eyes twinkled with a dangerous light. "Sarah-san, are you ready to play a game? It is called Hard Karma." I don't understand." "Tomorrow morning I have a board meeting at the Plaza Hotel. Calloway will be there trying to salvage the deal. He will bring his lawyers to discredit you and apologize to me. I want you to be there." "Me? He'll have me arrested if I step foot in there." "Not if you walk in as my chief of staff," Tanaka said. "The salary is $150,000 a year, starting tonight, plus a signing bonus that should cover your mother's medical bills." Sarah stared at him, tears welling in her eyes. Why would you do this for a stranger?" "Because you gave water to a thirsty old man when everyone else gave him scorn," Tanaka said simply. "Meet me at the plaza at 8:00 a.m. Wear a suit. And Sarah, yes, sharpen your tongue. We are going to war." The sun rose over Manhattan, casting long, sharp shadows through the blinds of Sarah Bennett's cramped studio apartment in Queens. It was 6:00 a.m. Usually at this hour, Sarah would be icing her swollen ankles from a double shift, or worrying about which utility bill to pay first. Today she was staring at her bank app on her cracked iPhone screen. The balance, which had been $42.18 the night before, now read $25.042.18. It wasn't a glitch. The transaction note simply read, "Kiso end. Advance." She sat on the edge of her bed, her hands trembling. It was real. Kaito Tanaka wasn't a hallucination induced by exhaustion. He was her lifeline. But with the money came a wave of nausea. She wasn't an executive. She was a waitress who knew how to conjugate Japanese verbs and memorize wine lists. She was walking into a lion's den to fight Harrison Calloway, a man who destroyed companies for sport. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the judgment that something else is more important than fear. Meet me at the Fifth Avenue boutique at 7:00 a.m. We must dress you for war. K. Tanaka. Sarah showered in cold water to shock her system awake. She pulled her hair back, not into the messy bun of a waitress, but into a sleek, severe ponytail. She applied her makeup with precision, sharp eyeliner, a matte lip. She looked in the mirror. The tired girl from the Gilded Lily was still there, but there was a fire in her eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. The transformation. At 7:00 a.m. Fifth Avenue was quiet. Kaito Tanaka was waiting outside a high-end boutique that usually opened at 10. The door was unlocked for him. "Good morning, Sarah-san," Tanaka said, bowing slightly. He was wearing a charcoal three-piece suit that cost more than Sarah's entire college education. "You look resolved." "I look terrified," Sarah admitted. "Good. Terror keeps you sharp. Arrogance makes you sloppy. That is why Harrison Calloway will lose." Tanaka gestured to the racks. "Choose. Not what you think a secretary wears. Choose what a partner wears. Navy or black. Sharp lines. No frills. Today you are not there to be decorative. You are there to be dangerous." For the next 45 minutes, Sarah was fitted. She chose a tailored obsidian black pantsuit with a silk lapel, a crisp white blouse that buttoned to the neck, and heels that added 3 inches to her height, but were sturdy enough to stand her ground. When she stepped out of the dressing room, the tailor nodded in approval. The fabric hid the shake in her hands. The cut made her shoulders look broader, capable of carrying weight. "Perfect," Tanaka said. "Now the plaza." His Plaza Hotel, 8:45 a.m. The conference room at the Plaza Hotel was named the Vanderbilt Suite. It smelled of lemon polish and fear. Inside, Harrison Calloway was pacing. He looked worse than he had the night before. His eyes were bloodshot, and he was snapping at his legal team, a phalanx of 5 lawyers from the firm, Sterling and Draper, headed by a shark named Miles Thorne. "I want the NDA watertight," Harrison barked. "If word gets out that Kiso walked away because of a service dispute, the stock tanks. We spin this. We say we walked away. We say their due diligence failed." Harrison calmed down, Lydia said. She was scrolling through Instagram on her phone, looking bored. "It's just an old Japanese man. You said he drives a Toyota. How dangerous can he be?" "It's not him I'm worried about," Harrison muttered. "It's that girl, the waitress. She heard things. She understood things." "She's a nobody," Greg, the VP, said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "I ran a background check this morning. Sarah Bennett, 24 years old, art history major. Dropout. Dad died 2 years ago, leaving massive debt. She's broke Harrison. We can buy her silence for 10 grand. 10 grand? Harrison laughed a cruel barking sound. "I'll give her $500 and a threat to sue her for defamation. She'll crumble." The heavy double doors swung open. The room fell silent. Kaito Tanaka walked in first, his presence commanding the space immediately. He didn't look at the lawyers. He walked to the head of the table opposite Harrison and pulled out a chair. He didn't sit. He waited. Sarah walked in behind him. The silence in the room shifted from respectful to confused. Harrison squinted. He recognized the face, but the context was wrong. The woman from last night was a servant hunched over wearing a stained apron. The woman standing before him now looked like she owned the building. The black suit was armor. Her eyes were cold. She carried a leather portfolio under her arm. She walked to the chair next to Tanaka, placed the portfolio on the mahogany table with a heavy thud, and stood tall. "Good morning, gentlemen," Sarah said. Her voice was steady, projected from her diaphragm, filling the room. "Please take your seats." Harrison's jaw dropped. You have got to be kidding me." Miles Thorne, the lead lawyer, stood up, adjusting his cufflinks. "Mr. Tanaka, I believe there is a misunderstanding. This meeting is for principals and legal counsel only. We cannot have unauthorized personnel present." He sneered at Sarah. "Especially former service staff with a grudge." Tanaka looked at Sarah. He nodded. Sarah turned to Miles Thorne. She didn't flinch. "I am not service staff, Mr. Thorne. As of 9:00 p.m. last night, I am the Chief of Staff for Kaito Industries' North American Division. I am here to facilitate the audit of Vertex Global, and if you have a problem with my presence, you are welcome to leave. However, if you leave, the acquisition offer is withdrawn immediately." "Chief of Staff?" Harrison sputtered, his face turning a violent shade of red. "She served me scotch 12 hours ago. This is a joke. Tanaka, is this your idea of a negotiating tactic? Bringing a waitress to insult me?" Sarah ignored Harrison. She opened the portfolio. Inside wasn't a menu. It was a stack of financial spreadsheets, the ones Tanaka had printed out overnight based on public records and industry leaks. "Mr. Calloway," Sarah said, her voice cutting through his bluster, "we are not here to discuss my resume. We are here to discuss why you reported a 15% increase in Q3 revenue when your supply chain in Malaysia has been shut down for 4 months. The room went dead silent. Even the air conditioning seemed to stop humming. Greg, the VP, dropped his pen. Harrison looked at Sarah, truly looked at her for the first time. And for the first time he saw the predator he had unwittingly created. Harrison recovered quickly. He was a bully, and bullies knew how to pivot when hit. He sat down, buttoning his jacket, trying to regain the alpha position. "That's a fabrication," Harrison said smoothly, waving a hand. "A supply chain hiccup. It's already resolved. We rerouted through Vietnam. Anyone who says otherwise is relying on outdated data. But fine, let's play your game. You want to talk numbers? Let's talk about the Kaito stock swap. We're offering a generous 1.5 ratio. "The ratio is irrelevant," Sarah said, not looking up from her papers, "because there is nothing to swap." "Excuse me," Miles Thorne interjected. "Vertex Global is valued at $4 billion. On paper," Sarah corrected. She looked at Tanaka, switching effortlessly to Japanese. "Tanaka-sama, shall I deploy the Atlas protocol?" Tanaka's eyes narrowed. He nodded. "Cut the head off the snake." Sarah turned back to the room. "Mr. Calloway, do you recognize the name Orion Holdings?" Harrison froze. It was a micro-expression, a flicker of panic in his left eye, but Sarah saw it. She had spent years watching customers, reading the tiny signs that meant someone was lying or cheating or heartbroken. She knew that look. It was the look of a man whose secret closet had just been pried open. "Orion Holdings is a shell company," Harrison said, his voice tight. "A venture capital arm, totally standard." "Standard?" Sarah pulled a document from the portfolio and slid it across the long table. It spun, perfectly stopping right in front of Harrison. "Orion Holdings is registered in the Cayman Islands. Its sole beneficiary is a trust listed under the name HC Venture. And for the past 18 months, Vertex Global has been paying Orion Holdings $5 million a month for consulting services." Sarah leaned forward, placing her hands on the table. $90 million, Harrison. Siphoned out of the company you are trying to sell us. That's not a supply chain hiccup. That's embezzlement. Lydia, the fiancée, sat up straight. Harrison? What is she talking about? Shut up, Lydia, Harrison hissed. He looked at Miles Thorne. Do something. This is slander. These are stolen documents. They aren't stolen, Sarah said calmly. They are public record if you know where to look. Mr. Tanaka's analysts are very thorough. But here is the part that isn't public. Last night at the Gilded Lily, while you were berating me for the ice in your scotch, you took a phone call. You thought I was invisible. You thought I was furniture. Sarah mimicked Harrison's voice from the night before, dropping her pitch slightly. Tell the Singapore team to shred the manifests. If Kiso sees the inventory logs, we're dead. Greg, the VP, looked like he was going to vomit. He pushed his chair back. I didn't know, Greg stammered. Harrison told me the inventory was just delayed. I didn't know about the shredding. Greg, shut your mouth, Harrison roared, standing up and slamming his fist on the table. She's lying. It's her word against mine. Is it? Sarah asked. She pulled out her phone. Mr. Calloway, do you remember Table 5, the quiet corner? It has excellent acoustics, and when one is learning a language, one often uses a recording app to practice listening comprehension. I had my phone in my apron pocket recording the ambient noise to listen to the Japanese cadence later. She tapped the screen. A tinny but clear recording played through the silence of the boardroom. Tell the manager to do something about the view, that old man over there. Then a few seconds later, Harrison's voice clear as a bell. Tell the Singapore team to shred the manifests. If Kiso sees the inventory logs, we're dead. Harrison Calloway looked at the phone as if it were a bomb. Miles Thorne, the high-priced lawyer, slowly closed his folder. He put his pen in his pocket. Harrison, Miles said coldly, Sterling and Draper cannot represent a client who engages in active fraud during a merger negotiation. It is a violation of our ethics clause. You can't walk out on me, Harrison screamed. I pay you a retainer of $50,000 a month. Consider it a severance, Miles said. He looked at Tanaka, bowed respectfully, and signaled his team. The 5 lawyers stood up in unison and walked out of the room. Now it was just Harrison, Lydia, Greg, Sarah, and Tanaka. Harrison slumped into his chair. He looked at Lydia pleadingly. Baby, it's a misunderstanding. I did it for us, for the wedding, for the house in the Hamptons. Lydia stood up. She looked at the diamond ring on her finger, a 5-carat stone that probably cost $500,000 of embezzled money. She twisted it off her finger. I don't want a house paid for with prison time, Harrison, she said, her voice shaking. She tossed the ring onto the table. It bounced and spun, coming to a rest next to the incriminating documents. I'm going to my mother's. She walked out. Greg, Harrison whispered. Greg shook his head. I'm calling the SEC, Harrison. I'm not going to jail for you. I have kids. Greg practically ran out of the room, fumbling for his phone. The silence that followed was heavy, suffocating. Harrison Calloway, the titan of industry, sat alone at the head of the table. His empire had evaporated in less than 10 minutes. Kaito Tanaka stood up. He walked slowly around the table until he stood behind Harrison. He placed a hand on the back of Harrison's chair. You asked for hard karma, Mr. Calloway, Tanaka said softly. You thought power was shouting at people who could not shout back. But true power is silence. It is listening. It is the ability to see the value in everything, even a cracked bowl, even a waitress. Tanaka looked at Sarah. Finish it. Sarah stepped forward. She didn't feel triumph. She felt a strange, cold clarity. She looked at the man who had tried to humiliate her, who had treated her father's struggles as a joke, who had treated her existence as a nuisance. The acquisition is canceled, Sarah said formally. However, Kiso Industries will be purchasing the debt of Vertex Global from your creditors at a discount. By noon, we will own your loans. By 2 p.m., we will call them in. Harrison looked up, tears of rage and fear streaming down his face. That means bankruptcy, liquidation, I'll lose everything. My penthouse, my stocks, my name." "You lost your name last night," Sarah said. "Now you are just losing the things you bought with it." She reached for the business card Harrison had thrown into the salad the night before Tanaka had kept it. She placed it gently on the table in front of him. "If you need a job," Sarah said, her voice devoid of mockery. Just simple, brutal honesty. "I know a ramen shop in Queens that is hiring a dishwasher. The owner is kind, but he demands punctuality." Sarah turned to Tanaka. "Tanaka-sama ikimashouka." "Mr. Tanaka, shall we go? Hai ikimashu." "Yes, let's go," Tanaka replied. They walked out of the Vanderbilt suite, leaving Harrison Calloway alone, with the sound of his own ruin echoing in the empty room. The walk from the Vanderbilt suite to the lobby of the Plaza Hotel felt like a journey between two different dimensions. Sarah Bennett's heels clicked rhythmically against the marble floors, a sound that echoed with newfound authority. Beside her, Kaito Tanaka walked with the serene silence of a man who had seen storms come and go, remaining the mountain that outlasted the wind. When they stepped out onto Fifth Avenue, the morning rush was in full swing. Taxis honked tourists rushed toward Central Park, and the city breathed its chaotic diesel-scented air. But for Sarah, the world looked sharper, clearer. The gray film of desperation that had coated her vision for the last 2 years, the fear of eviction, the weight of medical bills, the grief for her father had lifted. A sleek black town car pulled up to the curb. The driver, a large man with a stoic expression, opened the door. "Sarah-san," Tanaka said, pausing on the sidewalk. He didn't get in immediately. He turned to face her, the bustling city reflecting in his glasses. "You performed admirably today, but I suspect you are wondering something." Sarah clutched the leather portfolio to her chest. "I'm wondering why. Why me? There are thousands of translators in this city. There are Harvard graduates who would kill to work for Kiso Industries. You didn't just hire me because I gave you a glass of water." Tanaka smiled, a genuine expression that softened the lines of age on his face. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, worn photograph. He handed it to Sarah. She looked at it. It was an old Polaroid, faded at the edges. It showed 2 men standing in a garden in Kyoto, laughing, holding sake cups. One was a younger Kaito Tanaka. The other was a tall Western man with a gentle smile and kind eyes. Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. That's my father." "Thomas Bennett," Tanaka said softly. 20 years ago, when I was just a regional manager, and he was a junior diplomat, we worked on a trade agreement that everyone said was impossible. Your father was the only Westerner who bothered to learn the history of my hometown. He was the only one who understood that business is not about contracts, but about relationships." Sarah stared at the photo, tears blurring her vision. She touched her father's face in the picture. "He never told me he knew you." "He wouldn't," Tanaka said. "He was a humble man. When he passed away, I looked for his family. I knew he had a daughter. I found out you were struggling working double shifts at that restaurant to pay his debts. I could have just sent you a check, Sarah. I could have paid off the bills anonymously." "Why didn't you?" Sarah asked, looking up. "Because charity feeds the stomach, but opportunity feeds the soul," Tanaka replied. "I needed to know if you had his fire, if you had his integrity. Last night when you stood up to Harrison Calloway to defend a stranger, I saw Thomas in you. That was the moment I knew. You are not just an employee, Sarah. You are legacy." Sarah wept right there on Fifth Avenue. It wasn't out of sadness, but out of a profound sense of release. She wasn't alone. Her father hadn't left her with just debt. He had left her with a reputation that had silently saved her life. "Dry your eyes, Sarah-san," Tanaka said, offering her a silk handkerchief. "We have work to do, and I believe you have a lunch reservation to cancel." "Lunch reservation." "At the soup kitchen you were planning to visit next week," Tanaka said. "You will be dining in Tokyo next week." The Fall of the Titan. While Sarah's star was ascending, Harrison Calloway's was plummeting into the abyss. The collapse of Vertex Global wasn't just a business failure, it was a spectacle. By noon that day, the news had broken. The Wall Street Journal ran the headline, "Vertex Vortex CEO Caught in Embezzlement Scandal." By 2:00 p.m., as Sarah had predicted, the loans were called in. The lines of credit that sustained Harrison's lavish lifestyle were severed with surgical precision by Kaito Industries' financial team. By 4:00 p.m., the FBI raided the offices of Vertex Global. Cameras flashed as agents carried out boxes of files, the same files Harrison had tried to shred. But the true hard karma came 3 days later. Harrison sat in his penthouse overlooking the park, a glass of warm whiskey in his hand. The electricity had been cut off an hour ago. The silence in the apartment was deafening. Lydia was gone, having given an exclusive interview to Vanity Fair, where she painted herself as a victim of his controlling and deceptive nature. Greg, his VP, had cut a plea deal, turning state's witness in exchange for immunity. There was a heavy knock at the door. Harrison didn't move. He knew who it was. It wasn't the police. It was the marshals. Eviction. He opened the door to find 2 uniformed officers and a locksmith. "Mr. Calloway," one of them said, holding a clipboard. "This property has been seized by the bank. You have 15 minutes to vacate the premises. Personal items only. No valuables." Harrison looked around the room, the Italian leather sofas, the modern art, the view he had cherished more than any human connection. "Do you know who I am?" Harrison whispered, his voice cracking. It was the same question he had asked the old man at the restaurant, but now it carried no weight. It was a plea, not a threat. "Yeah," the marshal said, looking at him with pity. "You're the guy who lost $1 billion because he wouldn't let a waitress do her job. Grab your coat, buddy. It's cold outside." Harrison walked out of the building with nothing but a duffel bag of clothes. He tried to hail a cab, but his Uber account was suspended. He stood on the corner, rain beginning to fall, and watched a black town car drive by. He thought for a fleeting second he saw Sarah Bennett in the back seat, but she didn't look out. She was looking forward. 6 months later. The seasons changed. Winter melted into a vibrant, blossoming spring. Sarah Bennett sat in a conference room on the 45th floor of the Kaito Tower in Tokyo. The view was breathtaking, the Tokyo Tower glowing red against the twilight, the sprawling metropolis pulsing with energy. She was no longer the girl in the black suit who was afraid to speak. She was the director of international relations. She wore a tailored cream blazer, her hair cut in a sharp, chic bob. She was leading a negotiation between Kaito Industries and a German renewable energy firm. "The terms are unacceptable," the German CEO was saying, slamming his hand on the table. "We demand a 20% royalty." Sarah didn't flinch. She didn't look at Tanaka, who sat at the head of the table observing with a small smile. She looked the German CEO in the eye. "Mr. Richter," she said, her voice smooth but firm, "anger is a negotiating tactic for those who lack leverage. We know your technology is patent pending and your funding is running low. We offer 10% and we provide the manufacturing infrastructure. If you walk away, you explain to your board why you turned down the only partner capable of scaling your product globally." The room went silent. The German CEO stared at her. He saw no fear. He saw only competence. "Fine," he grumbled. 12%. 10%, Sarah said, closing her folder. "And we signed today." The CEO sighed and picked up his pen. "You are a difficult woman to say no to, Ms. Bennett." "I learned from the best," she replied. After the meeting, Tanaka approached her. "You handled that with grace. Your father would be proud." "Thank you, Tanaka-sama," Sarah said. "But I'm actually eager to get back to New York. I have some unfinished business." "Oh," Tanaka raised an eyebrow. "I need to visit an old friend, and I want to get some ramen." The return to Queens, New York was humid when Sarah returned. She didn't go to the Gilded Lily. That restaurant had closed down months ago, rebranded as a nightclub. Instead, she took a car to Queens to the small peeling storefront of Oishi Bowl. It was late, near closing time. The windows were steamed up. Sarah pushed the door open, the bell chiming above her head. The smell of rich pork broth hit her, bringing a wave of nostalgia. Ken, the owner, looked up from behind the counter. His face lit up. "Sarah!" he shouted, rushing around to hug her. "Look at you fancy clothes. I saw you in the magazine, The American Prodigy of Kiso. Incredible." Sarah laughed, hugging him back. "It's good to see you, Ken. Is the special still on?" "For you always free." Ken beamed. Sit. Number 5, extra spicy." Sarah sat at the counter, the same spot where she and Tanaka had eaten that first night. The shop was empty except for a figure in the back, hunched over the industrial sink, scrubbing a massive pot. The figure wore a stained white t-shirt and a rubber apron. His hair was thinning gray and unkempt. He scrubbed with a rhythmic, exhausted motion. "Hey, Harry!" Ken shouted to the back. "We have a VIP. Bring out the water and the appetizers. Chop, chop." The man in the back froze. He turned off the faucet. He wiped his hands on his apron and turned around. It was Harrison Calloway. He looked 10 years older. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow. The arrogance that had once defined his bone structure had collapsed into defeat. He walked slowly toward the counter, keeping his head down, carrying a tray with a glass of water and a bowl of edamame. He placed the glass on the coaster in front of Sarah. He didn't look at her face. He was trained now. Eye contact was for equals. "Enjoy your meal," he mumbled, his voice raspy. Sarah watched him. She felt no anger. She felt no vindictive joy. She just felt a quiet, profound sadness for the waste of a human life that arrogance had caused. "Thank you," Sarah said clearly. Harrison stopped. He knew that voice. His head snapped up. He looked at Sarah. He saw the designer clothes, the glow of health, the confidence. Then he looked at himself in the reflection of the napkin dispenser, greasy, tired, broken. "Sarah," he breathed. "Hello, Harrison," she said. "You?" Harrison swallowed hard, his hands shaking. "You came to gloat, is that it? You came to see the billionaire scrubbing pots? Go ahead, take a picture, send it to the press. Everyone else has." Sarah took a sip of the water. "No, Harrison, I didn't come to gloat. I came to eat." She reached into her purse. She pulled out a crisp $100 bill. "Ken tells me you're working hard," Sarah said. "He says you're never late, that you keep your head down." "I have to," Harrison whispered. "No one else would hire me. I'm toxic. Ken, he was the only one." "Then you are learning," Sarah said. "You are learning that the person who signs the checks is not the most important person in the room. The person who cleans the plates is." She slid the $100 bill across the counter. "Keep the change," Sarah said. Harrison looked at the money. It was more than he made in 2 shifts. Tears welled up in his eyes, not the angry tears of the boardroom, but the hot, stinging tears of shame and gratitude. "Why?" he asked. "After what I did to you?" Sarah stood up, smoothing her skirt. "Because, Harrison, in Japan there is an art called kintsugi. When a bowl is broken, they don't throw it away. They mend the cracks with gold. They believe that the piece is more beautiful for having been broken." She looked him in the eye. "You are broken now. But if you work hard, if you learn humility, maybe one day you can be mended. But the gold has to come from inside you." She turned and walked toward the door. Ken placed a to-go container of ramen in her hand. "Take it for the road, Sarah," Ken called out. Sarah paused at the door. She looked back one last time. Harrison Calloway was clutching the $100 bill, weeping silently, his head bowed over the counter. He wasn't the master of the universe anymore. He was just a man, and for the first time in his life, he was starting to become a real one. Sarah stepped out into the night. The rain had stopped. The air was fresh. She took a deep breath, hailed a taxi, and headed toward the airport. The world was vast, and she had a language for every part of it. This story reminds us that true power isn't about the suit you wear, the title on your business card, or the balance in your bank account. Harrison Calloway had everything the world tells us to value: wealth, status, and influence. But he lacked the one thing that truly matters: humanity. He forgot that every person from the CEO to the dishwasher deserves dignity. Sarah Bennett and Kaito Tanaka showed us that integrity and kindness are the ultimate currencies. When you treat people with respect, you build loyalty. When you treat them with disdain, you build your own destruction. The glass ceiling wasn't broken by force. It was broken by a few whispered words of respect. If you enjoyed this story of justice and karma, please hit the like button to support the channel. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder that nice guys and girls don't always finish last. And make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss our next story.